Hi, everyone, and welcome to the AWS Blogger. Joining me today is Cloud CTO for Turbonomic, Mor Cohen-Tal, who is also one of my partners. Not only is Mor Turbonomic's leading cloud evangelist and thought leader, but she's one of Turbo's first employees that started her career as a software engineer. Please join me in welcoming Mor to the show. Mor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, John. It's my pleasure.
So, Mor, real quick, where are you at right now?
So usually I'm based out of New York, but right now I'm in Tel Aviv, Israel.
You know what's interesting is last week I did a recording for a show in Asia. So I'm actually going global lately, which is a real amazing feat for me. I love it. This is fun.
Next time I have a Romanian citizenship too. We can record one out of Romania if you want.
I think I'm going to have to get a map on my wall and start putting pins in it for all my recordings and where it's happening. That's actually going to be good. You know what? Stay tuned. I might have to do that. So, Mor, to give a little bit of backstory, Turbo has been one of my partners for 2 years now. And the last time that we actually had a chance to get together was almost a year ago. I flew up to Boston to help with an AWS game day that you hosted for your sales kickoff. And I think it went really well, and it jump-started a bunch of things that we're able to accomplish as a team.
I mean, game day was absolutely incredible. The best thing about it was that I think it helped the broader Turbonomic team walk in our customers' shoes, right? Really experience what our customers go through every day and get to really understand the challenges that they have, but also the potential, right, that AWS can help them with. And I really think it made a very, very big difference. For me personally, it was also the last time I traveled for work before kind of the pandemic kicked in. I think about 2 weeks after that, New York shut down.
Yeah, that was one of the last times I actually got to go out one more time after that. Other than that, it was complete shutdown, and it was a change for all of us. But I think we've adapted very nicely, and we're able to kind of explore into a lot more of these kind of interview styles remotely, and it's more accepted.
I think so too. I think we'll find a right balance at the end.
I agree with you. Now, everybody, I just shared this out in the last week or two. Turbonomic put together a really cool, awesome AWS game day video. I'm going to put the link in the description below because I think they did an awesome job putting this together and really showcasing and highlighting the collaboration between AWS and Turbonomic. So why are we here today? Today, we're talking about Mor's recently released ebook, Cloud Best Practices. And before we jump into our topic today, I have to share some information that I found out about you, Mor. You know, you earned 7 patents for development of Turbonomic original cloud software, which is a really amazing accomplishment. Can you share us a little bit about it?
Yeah. So look, almost 6 years ago, and I remember it was October of 2014, we launched the first alpha version of our cloud optimization product. It may sound obvious now to everyone, but at the time it was quite a bit backed. Most organizations were just starting their cloud journey, and the main problems that people faced were either skills gap or cost visibility. And many enterprises at the time were even unsure if they are going to go heavy into the cloud or not. People were just figuring out what their strategy was. But my theory at the time was that, and it was mostly AWS at the time, that AWS can really unlock some tremendous value for customers, and that over time, it's going to be the main platform that even enterprises, but no doubt technology companies will run their products on. And, 6.5 years later, and there we are. And it's just has been really exciting. And really, as part of that, I tried to theorize when this reality arrives, what would be the problems that customers would have? And those were the patents that we were working on at the time. And it includes everything from SLO-based optimization to Kubernetes-based application optimization to just cloud optimization in general. And I learned a lot doing that. It was very exciting.
That's a really amazing accomplishment. First of all, I hope to one day submit a patent of my own to AWS, and where they give you these cool puzzle pieces, and I think that would be an awesome accomplishment. But just to hear how many that you've submitted, and 6 years ago, when I want to say cloud was still in its early stages, now AWS is celebrating its 15th birthday, happy birthday for that one. But I think that's a huge accomplishment, not only as, submitting those 6 years ago, but now the CTO. And, hats off to you. Congrats. An awesome job.
Thank you.
Now, I want to jump into the topic today for your ebook. Would you mind telling us a little bit about why you wrote it, what inspired you to write this book? Because I read through it a bunch of times and I found a lot of key things that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, as part of my role, I end up talking to hundreds of customers over the past, 6-7 years. And what I've realized is that there are a lot of similarities, and that, even though wherever a customer is in their journey, whether they're just starting or whether they're fully advanced, there are these common challenges that they experience, and a lot of those are avoidable. And really the goal of this book was to share what I've learned from my customers with everyone, so that hopefully more and more organizations could just do the right thing from day one and create a much smoother process so that they can really see the best out of the cloud. And look, I'm a big believer that builders, as AWS likes to call them, don't need to spend time on optimizing application resources. I've been a developer at the beginning of my career, and I can tell you that the last thing that got me excited waking up in the morning and going to work is optimizing my applications, right? Building and focusing on those patents and solving, those challenges and really developing these capabilities for my customers, that's what excites me. And I wanted to make sure that I help our customers, the broader AWS customers, make sure that they can focus on building and not on optimizing. And that was really what inspired me to write this book.
So I have to say that you've called out a number of things, and I love how you're following, AWS or Amazon's mentality. First of all, you said day one, that resonates really closely. Builders, another AWS thing, but you're really taking a lot of those things and, kind of going and moving forward with them and finding the value, that kind of, and I'm hoping, and I don't want to speak out of turn, I'm hoping, that really kind of inspired you to write some of, the context of this book, because we're going to talk about a few of those things that really hit, close to home with me, and that resonates with AWS and some of the capabilities of it. So, in this book, you mentioned the following. It's an investment in increasing agility, elasticity, and better cost intelligence. I'd like to talk about those areas a little bit more. What do you mean by agility?
So agility to me is the ability of a business to innovate and increase the pace in which they do so, right? So if you think of the taxi industry, right, and how it was disrupted by a few startups, right? If you look at the restaurant business and the delivery business, how we listen to music, how we consume entertainment, the ability to deliver value to customers fast is today not a necessity, it's an existential need. If you don't innovate, if you don't give to your customers what they're asking for, and if you don't do that quickly, someone else would come in and do that for you. And agility to me is the ability of an organization to innovate quickly and how fast they can do that. And I think the reason that I always tie this to AWS is that AWS empowers application owners within a click of a mouse, within just a single minute, to have everything that they've ever dreamed of. They don't need to wait for something to be provisioned, right? They don't need to wait for approvals to get capacity or hosts. If you think about it, even in the concept of startups, the bar for entry is much lower. As a startup, I don't need to buy hosts and servers and storage devices in order to release an MVP to 3 customers. I can just deploy and pay for those things on demand. And that empowers innovation in a way that to me is just really, really exciting. But on top of that, there's also the higher level managed services, which allows developers, application owners to focus on really what the problem that they want to solve for their customers. I don't need to figure out how to manage a database or how to patch things or how to develop a gateway or a load balancer, right? All of these things are just given to you, and you as a developer get to focus on the problem that you believe that you're the right person to solve and that you're excited about and passionate about. And that focus, to me, together with the ability to just get access to all of these things really at your fingertips, is just at the core of that agility.
Now, there's some key parts that you mentioned there earlier. One is you mentioned listen to your customers, and that's AWS's mantra. There is, customer obsessed. We're listening to our customers, and that sounds like something that you really are inspired by. And the agility part of all the AWS managed services that are available at your fingertips, that you, as a developer coming from the software engineering background, that you can just go and quickly develop, deploy, and really be agile at it. Excuse the pun if you want to go.
Exactly.
All right. So Mor, now I got to jump to the next one you're talking about is elasticity. And it definitely ranks up there with my top 3 benefits of AWS. The ability to expand, subtract resources when they're needed. Can you give us a little bit more about that and what you feel the elasticity is?
Absolutely. Look, I definitely agree that this is one of the key benefits, right? It's no surprise that AWS put it as the first letter of, a lot of your management, whether it's Elastic Cloud Compute or Elastic Block Storage. It's at the core because it's such a big component. Now, to me, customers always talk about cost, and that's the concept of elasticity, allowing you to shrink things down. But the most important thing is that it actually allows you to go both ways. And that is extremely powerful, right? And we cannot just constantly think about it from a cost perspective, but actually the ability to react extremely quickly to changes in demand so that you can add resources to make sure that you cater to your customers. Because there's nothing more frustrating when you I want to say just left the airport and are looking for a taxi, but that hasn't happened to me recently. But when you're just waiting to get somewhere or waiting for that delivery service, or you're extremely hungry and you want to order food, but it's just not responding to you, right? When people need your service the most, when demand is at its highest, you want to make sure that your customers are getting the service that they expect. And that elasticity, the ability to automatically add resources to cater to customers' demand, and when they're not needed, to just shrink them right back. It's moving away from building the church for Sunday, right, to a point where you just have the resources that you need exactly when you need them. And, it's more than just a technology shift. It's a cultural shift, because for decades in our industry, we weren't able to answer the question, how much resources do applications really need? So to get that elasticity, to make sure that you have exactly the resources that you need to be able to answer that question. And you need to get away from what a lot of my customers do, which is just, hug their resources. I won't deallocate anything because I never know when I'll get it back. But we started talking about agility, which is the ability to get whatever you need, right? And the two go together because they help fuel, right, that cultural shift that needs to happen within organizations.
Once again, you mentioned a couple things. One, we're going to talk about here in a second, the cost about things, but also resources readily available when you need them and at your fingertips, and you don't have to worry about having those resource constraints. Another thing that I'm going to mention, we're going to dive into just a little bit, is you don't have to predict those on demand ahead of time. They're readily available for you, just like in a traditional data center. You have to plan for 6 months to a year to 5 years out on what you're going to be. So, and then you have to basically have resources sitting there and idle.
Exactly, and there's a time benefit to it too, right? When you step away from planning 6 months, 3 years ahead for capacity,
Yep.
You suddenly have time to do other things.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it. Just click the button, set it, forget, let it do its thing. And now you can focus on, I have my resources. Let's focus on the development. That's a good point. Now, the last topic is a very important topic. And I think it's really important here within your ebook, is around cost intelligence. When I think about organizations moving to the cloud, I feel some realize that they can save X amount and run more efficiently. But then on the flip side of that, they're able to do more with experimenting and testing new features, which increases their cloud spend. Mor, I'm curious on what you think.
That's why I call it cost intelligence and not necessarily cost reduction. Because investing money in ways that will help your business increase revenue, or be more competitive in your space, deliver more reliable experience to your customers, is money well spent. So the question around ROI is, how then do you measure that value to your business? And when looking at the cloud, you have to take into account that investment, right, is going to just change how the business operates, right? And you can't just compare TCOs. I hear my customers talk a lot about total cost of ownership. And how do you compare total cost of ownership in a data center to total cost of ownership in the cloud? And while it's a very important thing to understand, you cannot compare because it's not necessarily apples to apples, right? The biggest advantage of the cloud is not just another place to host your applications. It's that it allows your organization to shift how it thinks about adding value to the business. As I said, it's being more agile, it's being more innovative, it's delivering better value to your customers through that elasticity that we talked about. And that, to me, is what we need to keep in mind when we think about that cloud journey. And you also have to think about the time spent on relatively antiquated processes, right? If we think about, time spent on capacity planning, or, even provisioning new VMs, things like that we can save as an organization and be more efficient. That, to me, is cost intelligence. It's about thinking beyond just total cost of ownership and actually understanding what the value will be to the business by transforming how it operates. And I think a really good example is something I just went through with one of my customers around databases. Just think about it. Even just in AWS, there are so many different ways to host databases. You can host them on an EC2 instance. You can host it on RDS. You can transform to take advantage of Aurora, or you can take advantage of more flexible, less structured services like DynamoDB, right? Now, if you just compare them from a cost perspective, RDS or hosting it on EC2 might be the cheapest option. But when you look at how it allows you to change how your business operates, right? That you no longer have to patch, you no longer have to update. With Aurora, you can actually be elastic, right? And with Babelfish, that was mostly recently announced, you can do the transition extremely easily, right? From the database systems you use today to taking advantage of Aurora. And it gives you that translation layer and that flexibility and elasticity within the database layer, which is just extremely innovative and opens up a host of additional opportunities for you as an organization. So if you just compare on cost, yeah, maybe hosting it on EC2 is the best thing. But if you actually look at how it empowers your business to operate and what it allows your people to do. At the end of the day, the most expensive resource in life is time, right? It's the only truly finite resource. I wish I had more than 24 hours a day, but when I invent that startup, I will definitely be a very successful person.
I think that'll go IPO really quick. So wait, you mentioned some key things coming from a traditional data center background and spending years doing this. You mentioned capacity planning. Oh my God, I remember spending 6 months to a year planning out the capacity that's needed for not now, but 3 to 5 years. And when those upgrade cycles happened, oh my God, how many meetings? I needed meetings to have meetings to have meetings to just do this capacity planning. And then they had to go through all the budgeting. Wow, man, that's bringing back some memories there.
Exactly. What would you do to get that time back?
Well, the other part of that is RDS. I remember setting up SQL servers to have automatic failover in another data center over here and setting up the witness and verifying, and always run into connectivity issues. Here I can click a couple buttons and already have my high availability. And now let me go focus on the business at hand.
Exactly.
That's interesting. I like how you outline that. That's some good information.
And that to me is cost intelligence, right? It's not just, the cheapest way to run my applications, to manage my data centers. It's how can it actually empower the business as opposed to holding it back.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a very insightful. I didn't think about the actual capacity planning part and how much time I spend from it. So going off of that, while we're on the subject of cost, what about cost optimization though?
Look, back when I first, years and years ago, helped expand Turbonomic's product to optimizing cloud environments, I hypothesized, I think that's how you say the word, hypothesized, that as organizations start adopting cloud at scale, cost optimization would shift to be the #1 priority and challenge. And I mean, today we're seeing that over 78% of organizations actually say that it is their #1 initiative for 2021. And to me, that's just validation that we're focusing on the right thing. But, even though customers refer to their #1 initiative and their biggest challenge is cost optimization, it really isn't just about cost. Because if it was, you could just, take everything, run it on a T2 micro, and there you go. You have no more cost problems ever, right? Your bill can be lower. But of course, no one can do that, because then your applications don't run. And then, when your customers try to order food or listen to music or whatever it is that they try to do and use your application for, it won't respond. And as I said, that really is the main focus. But finding that balance, how much resources do applications really need to perform based on how much demand is right now for them, is a tough problem to solve. And to me, cost optimization really is about making sure that every dollar that you spend with AWS is a dollar well spent to drive your business. And part of that is getting rid of over provisioning. Part of that is taking advantage of the elasticity, taking advantage of these higher level services so that you get the most out of what you pay for.
So you mentioned some cost optimization features in there. I have to throw this out there. I know an awesome product. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Turbonomic, and they do it for some cost optimization utilizing AI, and they have some really cool features. In fact, they recently released one that is the GP2 to GP3 with 0 downtime, and it's a performance thing. So what they look at is the ongoing performance. I'm sorry to throw that plug in there, but you kind of mentioned some cost optimization and automatic doing some of those things. And I was just like, wow, I can picture your product. I can picture the service mapping. I can picture, the optimization reports. I can picture all the benefits. Okay, I'm done.
There you go. You see, I don't need to say anything.
Yep.
But really, the book isn't about our product. It mostly is about helping organizations wherever they are. But I do believe that it's a big problem for organizations. Like, as a software engineer in my background, the amount of times that I was asked, how much resources do we actually need for this? And I guessed. And then that guess was, over provisioned just for safety. And then, just a little bit over that, just to make sure it doesn't break. My kids wake me up in the middle of the night enough times. I don't need any more.
Yes. So also just the book, I don't think you mentioned really Turbonomic, but just the actual benefits and the features and what you feel for cloud as well. So I'm sorry, I had to give that plug in just because I know your product. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right. So Mor, going back on to now, you mentioned a number of key things, and I have a question for you, a very important thing. Do you feel that the old mentality is still around or hard to break, where you don't have to purchase the biggest resources in anticipation for future needs? Don't? What do you think?
I still see it every day. I think I said it earlier, right? There are still, within our customers, within, the people I talk to, let me hug my resources mentality. I cannot let it go, because if I do, no idea when I will ever let it back, get it back. And once you embrace elasticity, it can change, but it's hard, because decades of experience show that you need to plan 3 years in advance and you need to ask for everything. And if you don't ask for it in advance, then who knows how long it's going to take for you to get that. So, decades worth of habit takes some time.
I hug my resources. I think I've seen a lot of memes on that one. Let's bring some thoughts. I'm actually picturing that, walking into the data center and giving it a hug. So Mor, in this ebook, you talk about 3 main responsibilities for CIOs when transforming their company into a cloud powerhouse. Could you share them with us? And then I'd like to talk about each one of them at a high level.
Yeah, so from my experience at the leadership level, there are kind of 3 main things that CIOs need to think about. And it's first, defining a strategic cloud strategy with clear and achievable goals, then reorganize to create an org structure that is aligned with that strategy. And lastly, is to declare and roll out the right incentives and accountability structures that really help shape the right behavior within that organization. And if done correctly, these 3 things can significantly both accelerate and smoothen out the journey to cloud.
Well, how about we talk about strategy first, because this is the first step. And the part I like is about choosing a cloud provider, but I'm going to let you get into that one.
So yeah, look, defining a cloud strategy is extremely important. And it doesn't have to be a full waterfall-like approach where 100% of your strategy needs to be outlined before you even dip your toes in the water. Quite the opposite. But it needs to be purposeful, and it needs to be aligned with the actual business. Right? So like I said, the value of cloud is how it can empower the business. And a lot of CIOs, again, get into the vortex of total cost of ownership and forget to look at the broader picture. And the biggest thing to me is that causes them, when they are choosing a cloud provider, to choose based on cost. And that can have very negative consequences down the road. So when you're thinking about defining your cloud strategy, you really need to think about which cloud provider and which strength, what matters most to your applications. Each cloud provider has their own strengths, right? And I've linked to third-party studies from other sources in the book. But it's really important to understand those and to pick the one that is the best fit for your applications and for what your organization would benefit from. We can't just compare around cost, because as I said, that's the wrong way to look at cloud. And then to me, then it's about iterating over that. So you can have a main cloud provider, but then say, if for specific applications, there are other capabilities that you need to take advantage of, veer away and create exceptions, right? Create ways for people to, in a decentralized way, get access to what they need, because that is the agility that we talked about. Right, so I find that most organizations land on a main cloud provider and a few auxiliary ones. Right, we're seeing more and more organizations, and I cite one of our latest surveys in the book, take advantage of more than one, because there are different benefits, different capabilities that you want to make sure you take advantage of. But it's really important. Skills are a little different, right? So it's important to educate the organization on that as well.
Now, I think you highlighted one of them, and I think kind of going into a little bit, you might want to consider a cloud provider that might have a breadth and depth of services.
Yes, that would definitely be it.
Sorry, I couldn't resist that way. You did talk a little bit. I thought it was my cue for a little plug and a little fun. The next one is the organizational structure. But from what I read, it's about the structure of the application and not necessarily the people, correct?
Exactly, because the two are so tied together. I believe that the right org structure actually empowers the application, right? It facilitates better development, better value. That's what you want it to be. Less barriers and more empowerment. And, there are two at the edge. Well, not the cloud edge, but at the edge of the org structure spectrum, there are two extremes, right? There's the decentralized and the centralized approach. And I find that most customers actually land somewhere in the middle. The decentralized approach at the extreme is, there's no oversight, no governance. You go and do whatever you need to be successful. The centralized approach is everything goes centrally, managed centrally, owned centrally. And it really creates that bottleneck, right? That's something that stands in between the developer and their access to whatever they need, right? Which is exactly what we're trying to avoid. And so most organizations actually find themselves somewhere in the middle, where there's a centralized approach that a centralized org, cloud center of excellence or cloud business office. I've heard it called multiple different things. That is at least defining some best practices, standardizes on tooling, on how to operate, sometimes even manages certain things. And the reason that I say that it's mostly about the application is because for off-the-shelf applications, for example, central management makes a lot of sense. For legacy applications that currently are managed centrally in the data center, centralized approach makes a lot of sense. But for greenfield applications, things that are actively being developed, innovating, changing, growing, expanding, those you want to make sure that you fuel, right? And for those types of applications, that decentralized self-service approach is really key. And that's most organizations land in the middle.
When I read the title for organization structure, and I was thinking, this is going to be talking about the people, kind of reorganizing the company, reorganizing something. But I was very surprised to read it was about the application, and it kind of opened it up. I'm like, okay, the organization of the application. Well, oh my God, that makes sense. And I really like that part.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, it's at the core of the business, right? And we want to make it easier for people to get their work done.
Very true, very true. The last responsibility is accountability and incentives. A few words actually stick out to me around governance, maintaining control, and of course, guardrails, or things that might turn your cloud environment. And this is a direct quote from you, the Wild West. Could you walk us through the stages of accountability?
Absolutely. And so with great power comes great responsibility, right? And with the power to, within the click of a mouse, right at your fingertips, as we talked about, deploying whatever resource that you want, any managed service, it's exciting to me as an engineer. But it can also create chaos, because what I never did as a software engineer? I never went back to the environment and said, hey, what's running there right now? Should I shut something off? Is it fiscally responsible? No, I was like, oh, let's test this. And you know what? If I use this for the application that I'm working on, what would be the impact? What would be the benefit? Let's try that one out. Oh, AWS released this new Graviton 2-based instances that are supposed to do this and this so much faster. Let's see what the impact is for me, right? And I'll test it out a little bit, and I'll get super excited about it. And then I will not remember to shut it down or clean it up, right? And that's that Wild West that I talked about, right? It's everyone can do anything. And it's exciting, and it's empowering, and it fuels growth and innovation, but it can also become the Wild West. And so making sure that you put some guardrails around it and create some accountability around it is extremely important, right? My daughter is turning 6 actually in 2 days, which is just crazy, and I can't believe that's happening. But one day I'll need to give her a credit card. I know that's going to come. And you can betcha that that's going to have a limit on it. Because just like when we make it super easy for developers to deploy resources or swipe that credit card to buy whatever candy she wants, we need to put some guardrails on that. And creating the right incentives is both, guardrails sound so negative, but incentives is the positive side of it, right? And I've seen organizations roll out some pretty incredible carrots to make sure that it generates the right behavior within the organization. And, it could be things like bonuses for optimizing. It could be things like, hey, the person who actually does the most gets the biggest bang for the buck, gets an Amazon gift card or, whatever that is. There are some pretty good incentive structures, and I give some good examples in the book on what you can do around it. But you need both guardrails, make sure there's some sort of framework so people, understand what is expected of them, some budgets, some best practices, and then make sure that there's also a carrot to it, right? That it's not just, hey, you must do this, or your AWS bill increased your budget by X%. You have to do this now, right? But they're actually incentivized to do that. And I believe that the right incentive structure can actually really drive the right behavior within the organization.
So you touched on a couple of things. First of all, happy early birthday to your daughter.
Thank you.
Yes, I know that it feels like I have an 8, 10, and 20-year-old. So you mentioned the credit card thing there. We won't get onto that subject at all. But Amazon gift card.
Sore spot?
Yeah. Let's just go to the Amazon gift card part. Man, it reminds me I have some things I have to buy. But the incentive thing is very interesting. I could see some huge benefits if you do it the right way, that it would increase the right behavior within an organization. I've known sometimes where I'll spin something up and I'll forget about it, and I'll come back to it and be like, oh, I should clean that up. Oh, wait a second. I could do this and this with it, and then I'll just want to play with it again. And it happens from time to time, but I actually just went through a cleaning cycle myself, made sure that I was being, cost efficient and clean up some of those resources. That's some good information.
It's important.
I agree. So, Mor, before we wrap things up, I have one question here for you. Do you feel that enterprises who follow these best practices have a competitive advantage to others?
Absolutely. One of the biggest customers that I am working with that have really rolled out, especially the incentives program, really, really well. One of the key things is that they've actually were able to significantly expand their use of managed services. And that to me is just an incredible side effect of what happens when you empower innovation within your organization. Because when you give application owners the ability to do that and give them the right incentives to do it the right way, it's that positive can-do attitude that rolls up within the organization, and just innovation spurs up. And that, to me, not only is the biggest advantage of the cloud, but it's what makes a lot of these organizations significantly more competitive. Yes, part of it is that, dollars and cents do matter because it allows you to reinvest back into the business and things like that. And we can talk about the cost benefits. But to me, the biggest benefits that happen is just by driving the right behavior, you get that innovation. And that is unparalleled.
I think innovation fuels builders. I literally just thought of that. I think that allows, that also the incentives is driving the innovation, which fuels the builders and really provides companies those competitive advantages.
Innovation fuels builders. I love that.
Yeah. Hold on one second. I'm going to coin that term. Please see me later if you would like to utilize it. So, Mor, my last question doesn't have anything to do with your ebook, but the timing of our interview is around International Women's Day. Could you tell us a little bit more about it and what it means to you?
Absolutely. So within Turbonomic, about 3 years ago, I was part of the founding group of an organization we call Develop Her. And as part of that, we really are trying to make our company a little better for everyone. And as part of that, we're the voice of women in the company. And to me, we rolled out a mentorship program that has got raving reviews. I mentor myself in multiple different programs. And to me, being an example, leading by example, making sure that I create the opportunity around me. Some of the most successful women that I work with today are just so inspiring. And they give me the confidence that I can do, right? And that is what I hope to be for others, just an example that it can be done and that you can still, raise a family and travel for work and be successful, and that you don't have to choose. And, the theme of the International Women's Day is the power to challenge. And I think that part of that is challenging the concept of choosing, right? You don't have to choose. You can have it all. And what it all means to you, that's up to you. You get to decide. And that, to me, is just, it's so similar to the cloud, right? The cloud gives you so much opportunities. You just get to decide how to build your application. That's what the world needs, all of us. That you get to choose who and what you want to be, and it doesn't get determined for you.
Really insightful and inspiring. And speaking of inspiring, thank you so much, Mor. Thank you for this book. It was really awesome. And I know there's additional ones coming out, so make sure you pay attention, follow us. We'll definitely share these in the upcoming weeks. So, Mor, I've got to wrap things up here a little bit, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing what you find interesting, but also what I find interesting, and an awesome topic around cloud best practices.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, everyone. And until next time, have a good one. Thank you, Mor.